Hi, I'm Ellen Gunning. My business is the PR Training Academy, and I'm a member of the Executive Committee of EADL, the European Association for Distance Learning. In this short series, we're chatting with fellow EADL members to learn a bit more about their story and find out how they've been impacted by COVID-19. I'm joined today by Peter Baxter, who is the director of an amazing college, online college, virtual college called Create School. Peter, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Oh.
You have a most extraordinary story about how you came to be running Create School, and it involves living in Australia, Aboriginals, music, Indigenous people. Tell me how you came to Create School.
Well, it started a long time ago. My family immigrated. We're Irish, so I just started school when we went to Australia, and we lived in a country town. But like most people, we lived on the coast, or near the coast. So we didn't really have much connection with anything beyond really urban Sydney. I lived in a rural town, but it was urbanish. So that was that. And then I finished school. I wanted to do teaching. I'd been accepted in the university as a teacher to do my teacher training. And I'd started a job at that stage in a completely different, unrelated industry, in shipping, actually. And I worked in shipping because we'd gone to Australia by ship. So we were on a ship for 6 or 7 weeks. And when I came to leave, my career guidance was literally, what do you know? Well, I was on a ship once, and I saw a job in the paper, and that's what I went for. The intention was always to go to uni, but I didn't. And then the money was good, and you're earning, it's very hard. And so for 3 or 4 years, different universities, I kept applying and reapplying. And finally they said, listen, forget it. So I worked in a job and an industry that really didn't have much appeal for me. It was interesting, I learned, but I decided that eventually in my mid-20s I wanted to be a creative, which I should have done when I was 18, to be fair. So I decided to do that, released an album, and got to tour the Northern Territory, see beyond where we'd grown up and what we'd seen. So it was this cultural impact. It was really interesting, and it triggered something in me. I supported an Indigenous artist called Archie Roach. It was really interesting, and traveled through Darwin, the Northern, Alice Springs, different places, and opened my eyes. So when I came back, I was really connected with this idea of storytelling. Being from an Irish family, it's obviously in the DNA. And so I was really interested how Indigenous culture worked. And I thought, there's got to be something in this. And so I took my interest in education, non-formal education, started designing a program, and took it to the Education Department of Australia, got it approved, took it to the different Indigenous communities that were involved and got permission. This all took a while. Meanwhile, I'd written another album and got an offer to bring it out in Ireland. So I decided to move to Ireland for a little while, and that was 25 years ago. I've been here since, back. And so then a friend asked me to do a workshop in a school, and it all just came from there. It just worked. I took this learning and this workshop idea that developed into courses and programs and different elements of creative, non-formal, particularly is our speciality, non-formal creative education.
And is the course that you originally designed in Australia, is that still running, or did it run?
Yeah.
You came back to Ireland?
Yeah, it's a songwriting course. So the whole thing is about connecting with creativity. And Ireland, of course, they have transition years. So we would do a lot of work in TY. It's a great opportunity for kids to take a bit of time, take stock, and do what I wish I had have done, which is thought about my career or what I wanted to do in life instead of ending up doing something else altogether. So this is an opportunity for creative self-expression. And that's what we try and trigger. So it was initially songwriting, but through other things now, through using mobile technology has been a great boon. So we use filmmaking, podcasting, still music and songwriting as well.
So you're really into the kind of things that younger people will be using on social media. So it's giving them a creative out and a structure around the stories that they might want to tell. Is your market mostly 16, 17-year-olds, and are you targeting schools? Because I thought you probably targeted a bit wider than that, but I could be wrong.
Well, we've pivoted as well with COVID. How it's worked. Traditionally, we would have a really strong blend of on-site, off-site learning. And then through working with students, we started working with teachers, and I would have been involved with Apple doing training for different programs that they offer for teacher training. And so teachers then wanted to get on board and see how we use that technology to engage students. So that's another area that's developed, and we would, for the last 3 years, we've worked with the Department of Education and Skills doing primary school training in the summer. So when COVID hit, literally schools closed here in a day. And so we had planned to do it this summer, actually, is design more online training based on the online for TY students, for those 16, 17-year-olds that we've been doing for primary school teachers. We just had to bring it forward a lot very quickly. And so that's what we've done. But the market's much wider. Yes, absolutely. There's any age group, really. The way our training is designed is that it should be relevant for anyone of any age. And we go younger as well. So we do training for 9 years plus as well, online and on site.
And at the risk of being a complete pain, what exactly do you train them in? How do you bring out the creativity?
Well, the methodology is really broken down into, we break it down into 3 bite-sized chunks. The basic philosophy is that we share learning, we engage. So the idea is connect with you somehow and see what your interests are. And then we then base the learning on your interests. So there's a broader template of the skills that you're going to learn, but if we can apply those to what you're interested in, the thinking is you'll engage more. The online element is fairly structured. This is how you turn a camera, this is the best way to focus, this is how to do that. But the assignment-based work that would go with it, the offline work, is tailored to allow scope for you to incorporate your interests. And that's how.
Do you think it'll make a difference post-COVID now, if you're looking to move more to online learning, because you'll have less opportunity to move into classrooms to actually physically teach people? Do you think it will change the way people will interact with you? It'll obviously change the way you teach the courses. Do you think it will change that level of engagement that you get, or how are you going to counter that? That people might just drop off if they're at home and they don't actually need to do it for class?
It's a challenge. So you need to have an element that is malleable or flexible, that will teach what it needs to teach, but allow scope for people to interpret it their own way. That's the key, I think. So you're able to put your own stamp on it, but we will give you the knowledge or the skills to do whatever it is you're doing. One of the other things we have is the distance in Ireland, obviously the geography. And so sometimes schools in the northwest or the southwest or in remote areas, they've always been difficult for us to go to if they were looking at a course that might be for 2 or 3 hours, because just the cost factors involved or the travel time or whatever. So distance learning provides an opportunity there, and that will be a constant, I think. And I think people will engage because they have to, or they're used to it.
And do you think you'll end up introducing, or you'll develop over the summer, new courses that you will introduce in September for the new intake of students because of COVID-19? Or will it be that you teach the existing courses differently?
A combination of both. And we are designing courses now. We're fine-tuning a new one for the Department of Education, which is on digital storytelling. And we're bringing in new program-based learning for transition year as well. So different modules. So the idea of our course is that it would be a course with varying components. So based on the interests of the students, it's maybe at the moment we have 5 different modules. So by September we want to have 10. And then you can pick the modules that you want, and then the course will be more relevant to you, hopefully, rather than just something so prescriptive that this is it, A, B, C, D.
And you don't only teach your courses to Irish schools, you actually teach abroad as well.
Yeah, I think in the last 15 years, we've been to Morocco, France, Germany, Croatia, loads of different countries. They would tend to be project-based work, but in Barcelona and El Prat de Llobregat, we've worked there for the last 10 years, up until last year actually, for 10 summers. And during the year, we've also done exchange programs with the Ajuntament there. And that's based on creative English. So the idea is that the Spanish students, it's an interesting way to engage, to learn the language. Some people don't through songs, say for example, song lyrics, but to learn it through creating is a really interesting way because it's different stimulus and
Have you any idea where do your children go after they've done this transition year course, or they've done these creative courses? Have you any idea? I know that these kind of skills can be used in every line of work. So if you've learned to bring out your inner creativity, it'll stand to you for the rest of your life.
yeah.
But have you got a large percentage who move into creative disciplines or arts or theatre or any of that area? Any way of knowing?
Yeah, we do. It's interesting because two of our staff actually were students in schools themselves who went through the course, were engaged with us initially in the course. We often run into teachers in schools who have been students and engaged with us themselves. Others would go to music college or IADT or NCAD, so different arts, media-related colleges in Ireland. A lot we would tend to have contact with, or they would make contact when they're doing their internships, or they'd come back to us. We've had some really interesting ones lately. I've had 2 requests for their songs for their wedding, songs that they wrote when they were 16, and it's just hilarious that they've. In one case, the girl herself, in another case, the fiance asked for a song to be played, and it's hilarious. So we'll keep a digital archive of everything we've done, but they were both early 2000s, and I thought it was hilarious. And just funny how people just connect with that, and
but it touched people. If they're coming back looking for those songs for their wedding, then it definitely touched a chord. And how do you source the people who teach your courses or create your courses then? How do you find the creatives who actually have the discipline to say, this is how it should work, and this is what will make people interact? Or how do you actually structure that?
It's a unique set of skills, and it's not necessarily like with a lot of teaching per se. It's the ability to transfer that knowledge or to engage with others of any age is interesting. Some of our projects we would work with people right through till retirement and beyond, different heritage-based projects. So you have to deal with primary, secondary teachers, people of all ages. It's a really interesting dynamic, and not everybody's comfortable with it. And I've often thought about what precisely it is. It tends to be a combination of factors, and part of it is we would part of our recruitment process or part of our onboarding process for people is that we would bring them in situ, in an observatory capacity, see how they react, see how people react to them, and see, and even if they've been educating for a long time, it doesn't necessarily mean that it would work within our way of teaching, and vice versa.
Very clever, actually. So you can find the skills, but you actually need to know, can they get the mindset?
Yeah.
And that's really why you're onboarding them, is to see, will they get it? Will they get with whatever it is that is the flow of your business, so that they slide into it? You mentioned the Heritage Council and training people from young to old. Do you find there's a difference in the way you teach then if you're teaching an older, because I would imagine that younger people are very tech savvy. They have no fear of using a new piece of technology. So if you bounce something by them, they go, yeah, fine, what is this? I'll get over it. I'll get into it. Whereas an older person, older being anything over 40, I would think, would say, I'm not so sure of this, I haven't used it before, how do I get into it? So do you need a completely different skill set, or do you need to target courses in a completely different way for an older age group?
You do need to target, and that's down to the language, particularly that you're using for your marketing, particularly. That would be the main difference. I think the key criterion, whatever you're teaching, is respect, and not to talk down to older people or talk down to younger people. So if you can find that level of engagement, that's the first thing. The second thing we say is to demystify the process. Technology is only a tool. And part of the reasoning is that the skills that we're teaching will outlast the technology that you're using. While a lot of younger people may be tech savvy, but they're not necessarily savvy in the planning element, or they don't always necessarily understand the complete process. So they don't see, for want of a better term, the big picture. So the process of going through, that's a skill that you acquire with experience.
And do you find then that your marketing and advertising is very different You must target in one way for younger people, one way for older people. I keep saying older, although I'm in the older bracket, but for different target markets, or even whether you're doing heritage or digital storytelling.
Yeah, you do. And I'm just saying, I'm finishing a PG, postgraduate course myself in college at the moment. And so we're constantly, it's on creative and cultural studies. And it's interesting because you're constantly having to reevaluate this. So it's interesting you ask, because I've just handed in an assignment today based on this. And part of the takeaway from that is that we need to go back and redesign we need to fine tune it further. So essentially, there's three markets for what you do. There's parents, for the outside of school market, there's educators who would be our customers, and then there's end users, which would be the students themselves. And then there's the general market as well, the wider public. So it's actually four, but it's different because each of those will have different expectations and different interests and different pain points and different areas that we have to try and focus and address on. Because if you imagine for a school, for example, the program we're developing or delivering rather has to appeal to the students who are doing it, but it initially has to appeal to the teacher who's authorizing to bring this in, and then the principal if they have to sign off on it. So there's a whole different layer of complexities within that as well, which is interesting but challenging.
It's a whole science, because I remember attending a TY, a transition year exhibition some years ago, and there was a company exhibiting at it, and they commanded every child who came into that exhibition space was around them, watching what they were doing. They were very interactive, they were very engaging. And being a nosy snoop, I followed them up afterwards and said, "You really nailed it. What do you think made it work so well for you?" And they said, "Actually, it didn't work at all. We got all of the children, we got none of the teachers." And the teachers are the people who decide whether or not this program will be introduced. So the kids loved it, but exactly what you were saying, the messaging for the teachers was wrong. And they didn't buy into it. And if they didn't buy into it, the kids were never going to study it at school. So a different messaging for different audiences, a very broad sweep of people that you're dealing with. Do you see new opportunities then coming out of COVID-19 for your business?
Yes, most definitely. I think that in relation to some of the points you're making or asking previously, is that a lot of the learning is the same. It's how flexible and adaptable it could be for other audiences. So say, for example, if I'm teaching a 16 or 17-year-old in Ireland, which is transition year, if we're teaching skills, say digital media skills, but we're teaching how to operate or how to make a podcast, what's involved and the whole process through from start to finish. If I can do that for them, why can't we do it for maybe a 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, whatever age person, 60, who is interested in doing something similar, maybe interviewing other people in their work or field, or recording their own life stories, whatever it might be. What's the difference?
So coronavirus has been challenging in the short term, but will probably provide you with good opportunities for the future.
It's asking a lot of questions, and we're trying to answer them, I think, is sure. But there's so many different opportunities, and sometimes we don't see. And I think one of the things is, as anybody who's providing courses, we can become very regimented and prescribed in what we see is who our audience is. Sometimes your audience will find you, and sometimes other people will realize an opportunity that you don't realize. And that's happened a lot. People will say, "Oh, I'm running whatever it might be. We'd love to do a course. Do you think?" And yeah, let's have a chat about that and see how it might work. Absolutely.
So it's partly being open to opportunities as well. One of the things that really comes across from talking to you is that there's a huge amount that goes into creating a course that really is creative and interactive and engaging, and that people want to do, so that they finish it through to the end, and they finish with that yippee-ki-yay moment that says, "Yes, I learned something and it was great fun and I enjoyed it." One of the things that COVID has created is a whole range of people who now say, for whatever reason, it could be in-house skills that they previously thought, "I now need to teach this online." So from EADL's point of view, I suppose we're seeing a lot of people coming in who want to become online learning providers. What's your key piece of advice that you would give them? for somebody new coming into the business of online learning?
I would say research your market, absolutely. And I would also be constantly surveying your market. So there's a lot of analytics you can get that will tell you in terms of engagement, how many people will start a course, how they interact with the course, what the completion rates are, etc. And completion rates are interesting. If it's an accreditation they're going for, obviously they need 100% completion. But sometimes people don't need to complete a course to get what they want from a course. If it's a soft skill or whatever it might be, so that's all of these things you have to determine, and finding your audience and getting them to answer questions that trigger questions, really important questions. Like, it's no use me designing a course and I say this course is the best course there is, because it might be a course that is not what my audience, my intended audience wants, and it could be the best course in the world, but it'll sit there and no one will do it. So you need to research and keep researching and asking people, and then evaluate as you go through. So surveys all the time, not huge surveys, just key points, and ask, how do they find it? What do they suggest? So we ask students who go through all the time, what did you like? What didn't you like? How could we improve what we do?
I think that's a great takeaway, that you need to do a huge amount of research, and you need to remember that just because you've created the greatest little course in the world, unless people actually want to take it, you've created it for yourself and you have an audience of one. Peter Baxter from Create School, thank you for joining me. I really enjoyed that chat. That was Peter Baxter from Create School. I'm Ellen Gunning from the PR Training Academy. And this interview has been sponsored by EADL, the European Association for Distance Learning. We hope to see you again when we meet another member next time. Until then, stay safe. Essential online training solutions for communications professionals. The PR Training Academy.